All right, I see the numbers starting to slow down, so we have a lot to talk about today. So we'll go ahead and kick things off. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another webinar. My name is Jeff Hunter, and I am the Field CTO here at NinjaOne. A couple of months ago, back in late February, if memory serves, we did a NinjaOne Speedrun that was focused on endpoint management. And today we're going to be doing the exact same thing, but for NinjaOne ticketing, starting from scratch, a completely blank ticketing environment, and seeing how much we can get set up in under an hour. Before we kick things off, a little bit of housekeeping. This is being recorded. This will be sent out to everybody who is in attendance today. It will also be posted on our YouTube channel, and we would recommend that you subscribe if you haven't done so already. If you missed the first NinjaOne Speedrun on endpoint management, that is posted on our YouTube channel, and of course, this will be posted there as well once we finish the recording. Another note here is we do have a giveaway, so that'll be announced at the end of the call. You don't need to do anything. Just by virtue of registering and showing up here, that's all you needed to do. We'll bring on Andrew at the end and he'll announce that. And lastly, we do have a Q&A section here. I would highly encourage you, as you have questions, please drop your questions into that Q&A section, not in the chat. We have Zach from our sales engineering team on today, and he's going to be answering those questions in the background. And it's much easier to keep track of in the Q&A section than it is in the chat. Now with that, I think we have set the table sufficiently and we can go ahead and kick things off. So we are starting in actually the exact same environment that I was in for the previous speed run. You can see some of my setup that's already in here. I've got a bunch of devices. Most of them are offline at this point. Now, to get started with ticketing, we would go to the top right. We have the NinjaOne apps squares there, and we can see a variety of NinjaOne apps. There's more here if we click on View All, but the topic of conversation for today is NinjaOne ticketing, so we are going to click into that tile there. Now, I've already enabled this. I think I enabled it on the previous speedrun webinar, but I've otherwise done no setup here, so we are starting essentially from scratch. Now, when you enable the ticketing application right here, it's going to pop up with a modal box that looks like this. And you will need to select the domain that you want to set up so that you can receive emails from the ticketing system. In my case, I've called it Dobbs Theaters, and that's the subdomain from .rmmservice.ca because we are in the Canadian instance on this particular this environment. I personally kept this identical to my branded portal. So for me, that made sense. I have a branded portal where end users can log in to remotely access machines to manage their own backups if they want to do a self-service restoration. And then, of course, they can also track tickets that they've already submitted and submit new tickets. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. All that is to say, you can have this be the exact same as your branded portal, or it can be completely unique with however you would like to receive emails here. Now, here's an additional bit of functionality. If we go to the email tab here, you'll see that you can configure a variety of inboxes based off of this subdomain. So I could, in theory, have a variety of email addresses for a specific intended purpose. They could be broken out by region. In this case, I think I'll stick with just having one dedicated email address. Now, let's say I am already leveraging an email address that I've used for years. Everybody is used to submitting tickets to this particular email address. I don't want to change up things midstream. I want to keep that long-term consistency there to make sure that no tickets get lost in the shuffle or missed. And this is just acknowledging the reality that most people are going to be submitting tickets via email. We'll talk about the other methods that NinjaOne has to submit tickets, but bending to reality here, most people seem to just submit tickets via email. Now, let's say you want to continue leveraging that external email domain that you control. You want to have people be able to submit tickets to that and have those tickets then funnel into NinjaOne ticketing. And so if we go to edit this setting here, you'll see that there's a forwarding address. And so what you would need to do is in your external domain that you control, set up an auto redirect that goes into support at, in this case, dobbstheaters.rmmservice.ca. And then from there, we would receive those. We would take out the forwarder as we wouldn't view them as the point of contact. We would view the originator of the email as the point of contact. So it doesn't look like everything's coming from the same person. And this would allow you to receive inbound emails People can submit tickets via email, and then you'll be able to receive them inside of Ninja Ticketing. We then need to cover the second phase there, which is the outgoing responses. You may want to have your outgoing responses from Ninja Ticketing be sent out from your external email domain that you control. And so if we go back into general here, we'll see SMTP email sending. We can use either basic authentication for M365 accounts. You're probably going to use OAuth since that is now the default for how they set up M365 accounts. And so we would go through and proceed through that setup there, and this would give us the outbound communication. The forwarding addresses that we saw inside of the email domain right here, this would give us the ability to receive the inbound emails, and then or when we're responding, we can use the SMTP email sending to handle the outbound emails. And this ensures that everybody is viewing the same address and there's no confusion about maybe where this message is originating from. Now, in our case, we're keeping it standard. We're not leveraging an external email address. We are going to use just this basic email address right here. You'll notice that there are other settings that you can configure here. We'll talk more about forms that allow you to collect data in a more distinct way. You can also predefine the type of ticket that we're seeing here. Is this a problem ticket? Is it a question? Is it a task? And then, of course, the priority and the severity, as well as any tags. You might want to auto tag a ticket with a certain tag so you can identify it via automations or just for reporting purposes inside of NinjaOne. Now, again, you could have a variety of these email addresses if you want. I will say, me personally, I find that one tends to work for most people who I speak with. But of course, if you're perhaps an MSP with a variety of different customers, having a dedicated email inbox for specific high-profile customers may be something that you're interested in leveraging to improve quality of service. Now, this is one way to receive tickets, and it's a very important one because, as I said, it's probably the most common way that people are going to submit tickets. Now, out of the box, NinjaOne is going to require that every email address that's emailing you be in the system in some way to avoid any delay in service. And so if you're a technician user, if you're an end user, or if you're a contact who's already in the NinjaOne system, when you email into this email inbox that we see right here, you're good with the band, you're in the system. Now, if you're not already in the system as a technician, as an end user, or a contact, you are going to need to approve them as a requester. And so we can see here the pending emails board over on the left-hand side. If I had any outstanding emails here, I would be able to go ahead and approve them or reject them as I see fit. Now, to make sure that you don't have these delays in service, I would recommend leveraging an email list. The email list is really valuable because it allows you to specify either a domain or an individual email address, and they are allow listed or block listed. And so in this case, let's say I wanted to go ahead and say, well, anybody emailing from a domstheaters.com email address, I want them to be allow listed. I don't want them to be caught in the pending emails bucket. I want them to go right into my all tickets board so they can immediately have their tickets worked on by a technician without any potential delay in service. Now, you can also go ahead and do this for specific email addresses. This probably makes more sense if you are going to be blocking somebody. You may want to block a certain email address that is maybe spamming you all the time. And then, of course, we also have the option here to essentially say, we don't want the pending emails bucket at all. Anybody at all who emails into the system, they bypass the pending emails bucket and they go directly into the main ticketing board where they are treated just like any other ticket. So you have plenty of options here. Again, me personally, in this scenario, I would want to leverage the domain option here. So let's say domstheaters.com. Anybody emailing with that email domain, they're automatically in here. Everybody else, I'm going to have to approve if they send in a ticket. So we'll go ahead and add that in right there. Now, there are, of course, a variety of other ways to receive tickets. We talked about using an end user, and that's actually one bit of setup that I've done in advance of this webinar is I did create an end user right here. And so you can actually see me logged in right here as this particular end user. And you can see the view is wildly different from what we see as a technician. Here we have kind of complete access. We've got dashboards, we've got reports, policies, the whole shebang. But in this view, the end user view, it's significantly more limited. Now, this does three primary things. It does facilitation of remote access. You can see I've been assigned a device right here. And then from there, I have the option to leverage either a terminal session or Ninja Remote to initiate that screen share session. If I was leveraging Ninja Backup, which I'm not in this particular environment, at least not yet, I would have an additional icon there where I'd be able to go into the backup manager and I'd be able to actually download files that have been previously backed up, self-service backup restore option. And then finally, the reason that we're all here today is ticketing. It also gives you the ability to submit tickets. And so I could go ahead and create a brand new ticket like so. And we just need a subject and a description right here. We'll need to fill out a severity, and we can also optionally include anybody who should be copied on this particular message here. Now, this is a topic that we'll dive into in a little bit. We'll kind of circle back to this, but we'll talk about the usage of forms. Forms in NinjaOne ticketing allow you to provide data fields that create a more linear experience when you're trying to track data. So in certain issues where you have recurring scenarios, uh, and you want to have all that data collected, the forms are very useful because it standardizes all of that without having to rely on the technician to put an email in the body of the ticket. And so we're actually going to go ahead and, like I said, circle back to this later once we start breaking out the fields and the forms and show how you can collect this data. And the end user portal is really important because it is the method through which end users are going to be able to actually directly interact with these and provide that information to you to streamline the ticketing process. Otherwise, the fields and forms could be leveraged by technicians, but at that point, the technician has to essentially probe the end user and query them so that they can provide back the necessary data. Like I said, we'll talk more about this in a second, but first, we have a poll question that I wanted to ask everybody, which is that in ticketing, you deal with a lot of different tickets. Recurring tickets that happen all the time. And so we have actually a free write field, I think, that is going to, yep, right there, we have a poll popping up right now. And so I'm curious, what type of recurring ticket comes up for you all the time that you wish you could address in some way? I'll say that password resets is one that I hear about all the time, resetting passwords for various services. But I'm kind of curious what you hear every day. What are the recurring tickets that you wish you could eliminate in some way or automate in some way simply to make your life easier? Like I said, we'll come back to this in just one moment. But for now, we're going to jump back into the technician view right here to talk about another way to submit tickets. Now, this method would be using the help request form on a device. And so we'll actually go into this organization here, and we'll go into this device, and we'll actually initiate a remote screen share. So right here, we're in our Ninja remote session here. I'm going to go ahead and log in real quick. And so down here at the bottom, you'll see that we have a systray icon. This is something I configured on the previous webinar. I'll dive into how we can configure this in just a second, but I wanted you to actually see what this looks like in practice. The systray icon allows you to provide self-service options to your end users. You'll see there's a few different ones here. We've got quick links down here to specific services. We've got the about page, which is really helpful because you can include environment variables in there. So in the situation where somebody is not submitting a ticket via email or through the end user portal, they're actually calling you up for service. In the event that they don't know the name of the device that they're on, having this in place allows you to put an environment variable with the device name right there. They read that off to you, and you're able to easily find the device inside of NinjaOne. Now, ideally, to my mind, the best way for somebody to submit a ticket is leveraging the help request form that we see right here. Now, this is always contingent on user adoption. How can you convince your end users to actually take advantage of this very convenient option that's right on their desktop to submit tickets? But if you are able to convince them to submit tickets in this manner, you can see that this provides a very linear experience. We need the subject, the body. We can include any images we might have previously taken, or we can take a fresh screenshot right now, which I will go ahead and do. And then we'll go ahead and enter our name here. just to give you a demonstration of what this looks like. If I could type, that'd be great. And we'll say network is slow. And so we'll go ahead and send that. We can see that that has been submitted successfully. Now let's go ahead and look at how this is actually configured within Ninja. We'll go back into the administration section on the left-hand side here. We'll go over to the branding page. This is where I've set up my branded portal, which you can see right here. And then we'll go into the sys tray. You can create a variety of sys tray options. I imagine most people really only need one. But again, if you're an MSP who needs to sort of white label for a particular customer, you can absolutely create multiple sys trays and provide multiple menu trees to various end users, depending on what they need to have. And that all is assigned by organization. Now, if we actually edit this sys tray right here, you'll see my menu tree. I am not using the full suite of everything that can be done through the sys tray. You could have a pre-composed email sent through the default email client. You could have a basic Windows or Mac OS command launched by a one-line terminal command. We could also use the quick links to direct somebody to a particular URL. But again, in this case, we're just leveraging these four options here, and I wanted to show you this option in specific, which is the help request form. You can see this is being forwarded into Ninja ticketing, but of course, if you wanted to leverage this to a support email address, you absolutely could. And you can also use the PSA integration. If you're a ConnectWise manager or an Autotask user, this will funnel those help request forms over to those services via an API connection. Now, if we go down a little bit further here, you'll see the subject line that we want this to appear as. This can be modified, and you'll also note that we have these 6 fields here at the very top. We have first and last, email address, phone number, subject, and description of the problem. And so that is what is the data fields that are viewable by the end user. And those are the data fields that we'll receive as a part of the body of the ticket. However, you're not limited to just that information. You also get all this additional information that we see here. And you can also expand and extend what is being collected by adding additional environment variables on at the very bottom here. You can see we have a few generic ones, but if you have additional environment variables you'd like to capture as a part of this process, you absolutely can. But this gives us all the identifying information that we're going to need about the device. And so if we actually close out here and go over to our all tickets board, we can see that this ticket has been submitted. And so we can actually kind of go through the process of what this might look like. Now, when we click into this ticket, I've done nothing here. There's no automation configured. This is just how the ticket looks straight out of the box. And you can see in the top left here, we have our subject line, of course. We have our status. We have new, open, waiting, paused, and resolved. Those are the out-of-the-box statuses that everybody has in Ninja. However, you can add on custom statuses if you'd like. So if you want to have a variety of new statuses, a variety of open statuses or waiting statuses or resolved statuses, you certainly can. And that can fit your individual needs as a business. We also have our different types of tickets. We can see that there's no type. We have a problem ticket, we have an incident ticket, a question, and a task. I won't spend too much time on this. It's fairly self-explanatory, but I did want to talk about the parent-child relationship between a problem ticket and an incident ticket. A problem ticket is, you have a problem. An incident ticket is an incident tied to an overarching problem. The problem would be the umbrella, and then the incidents would all be under that one umbrella. And the benefit of this is, let's say you have a problem ticket for the internet being down at a particular location. And then you have a bunch of people emailing you on their phones saying, hey, my internet's not working. My very expensive computer is a paperweight because it has no internet connection. And those would all be the incidents associated with the overarching parent problem. And so in this case, the benefit of this is that we can respond in mass. So if we have a variety of incidents tied to a parent problem, we can go to that parent problem, type out a response, and we're able to publish that response to all child incidents. So instead of having to respond to 20 individual tickets saying the internet's back up, the internet's back up, the internet is back up, I can actually go to the parent problem and push out that message in one click of the mouse. And then here we can also see the forms. Again, we're going to create some forms here and actually see how that can enhance the data collection. To give you a visual here, the forms would appear below the CC box here. And so this would expand the details page to allow you to, the details tile here, to allow you to collect data, in a manual way that again, matches whatever your business needs happen to be. And we'll talk again about the value of this. You can drive automations from what's entered into the custom fields. You can also report on it. So there's a lot of value there, but we'll kind of get to that once we dive into more of the ticketing configuration. Now, one reason I am a huge fan of the systray is that right here we can see the requester. This information is already automatically filled out by virtue of having the end user submit from the systray. Because when they submit from the systray, we know the organization that they're in, we know the location that they're in, and we know the device that they submitted this ticket from. And you can see the convenience here of not having to go in here and mess with all of this and submit or find the device and select the device that they're a part of. It's just already there. And then furthermore, we get this quick play button here. The play button gives us quick access to the device. And so if somebody says, hey, I've got issues here, my network is slow, maybe I'm immediately going to go ahead and run a script that performs a speed test. And so we have actually a template library script that does a speed test and writes it into a custom field. So that's a great first step there to actually see what is the current internet speed at a particular location. Now, aside from that, what we do have to manually fill out is the assignee. I'll go ahead and take that ticket. I might have to submit a priority and severity as well. I'll say in this particular case, this is fairly low to me, fairly minor, and so we'll leave it like that. And then I also have the option here to include tags if I want. The tags, again, are very useful. They can also drive automations. So a ticket with a certain tag could perform a certain action, and maybe a ticket without a certain tag would have a different action. And then, of course, we can CC anybody who we might want to include on this ticket, so that way they also have visibility on this. Now we have our public responses here. Anybody CC'd, anybody who's the requester, they are receiving this via email. If we want, we can maintain this as a private note. You'll notice that this box is actually in a light yellow versus just the pure white of the public response. And that is a visual indication that this is going to be a private note that is only viewable and accessible inside of the NinjaOne app that we see right here. I will pause here to mention that we do have a mobile app as well that also has ticketing functionality. So if you would like to handle your tickets on the go, you absolutely can. And you would, of course, be able to view the private notes in there too. Now, right here, let's say I want to respond. I might have a boilerplate response here, and I'll go ahead and say, thank you for your ticket. We are looking into this. And then I can go ahead and publish this up here in the top. Oh, I have to set an actual requester here, of course. And so we'll go ahead and set myself. There we go. And I can then publish. And so now this has been sent out here. And we can see all this history over time. We can also see our changelog here. So if anything was being modified about this, I would be able to see how that's been modified over time. Now, before we leave the ticket editor and dive into more of the actual setup and configuration here, you'll see the ability to split a ticket, merge a ticket, export this, or just delete it entirely. When you delete a ticket, it goes into a deleted tickets bin over here on the left-hand side. So it's not gone forever, but after 30 days, it will be automatically purged from that deleted bin. And then one other bit here that we'll dive into on the configuration side is the response templates. I always say this is your frequently used answers in response to frequently asked questions. Any sort of repetitive query that you get all the time, you can start to build out a database of good standardized responses that everybody can use. And so at that point, it becomes a one-click action to say, oh, well, this is out of scope for us. I'll go ahead and click on the out of scope message. That would automatically populate text into this public response field. It could change the status. It could add tags. There's a lot you can do by using just one-click automations via the response templates. And again, we'll dive into that in a little bit. But for now, let's jump out of the ticket editor. Let's actually go look at how we're going to set some more automations up and really start to streamline the ticketing experience. Now, for starters, we have some very important settings right here on the main general tab of the ticketing administration page. For starters, you may want to track time. Currently, we do not have timers set up here, but I might want to have a timer auto start as soon as I click into a ticket. I may also want to have this be manually started and stopped for time tracking purposes. For my purposes, we're going to auto start. And so as soon as I click into the ticket, the timer is going to start counting. And then that timer would stop tracking once I publish a response. And that would indicate how much time has been tracked as a part of that particular entry on that ticket. Of course, that is cumulative over time. So if you click back into a ticket to look at another response from the end user, that just continuously happens and the time is continuously tracked. Some other basic settings here. I would highly recommend using this setting here. You saw that when I went to submit a ticket from the sys tray, that I did not automatically see the end user who submitted that, who was myself. I did not actually see them filled in as the requester. And so using this option here eliminates that additional bit of work that you have to do. Now we also have business hours here. I'm 24/7, so I'm leaving this set to the all the time setting. But if you did have business hours, you can go ahead and set those based off of the day and your regular operating hours. This does not change anything about Ninja ticketing. There is nothing out of the box that this ends up changing. This only gives you the ability to change how your automations are going to operate based off of whether you're within or outside of business hours. So whatever you set here, if you're not already using any automations, this changes nothing for you. The automations is where the business hours actually start to come into play. Again, we'll leave that set to 24/7 here. Now, if we go down a little further here, we'll see system email notifications. Now, right here, these are built-in system notifications for whenever any of these actions occur. Note here that we do have separate tabs for if somebody is the technician or the end user. So somebody as a technician, they're going to have different notification settings than if they're an end user. Keep in mind that a technician could potentially be a requester of a ticket if they submit it themselves or they make themselves the requester. So this isn't strictly breaking down based off of assignee and requester roles. It's based off of technician or you're an end user or a contact. You can see how those options are going to change. Now, it's a very common question that we get is, hey, your system email notifications, I want to modify them, and I want them to be what I want them to say. I want to personalize them, which is completely, a normal reaction, a logical decision that you might want to take. And you'll notice here that none of these can actually be modified. So there's no way to control, the built-in notifications in terms of what they are going to say. You're kind of hard-coded in with the boilerplate. However, you'll note that these can be turned off. And so in this case, with an end user or contact, when a ticket is created, I actually don't want to use the built-in notifications. I would rather personalize that for my own purposes. And so I'm going to save here. And note again that this only applies to the end user or contacts who are requesters. This does not apply to anybody who is a technician. So we've disabled that, but we have a problem. We need to replace it with something. Otherwise, nobody is going to know that their ticket has been created and they're going to become concerned. People have these days are conditioned that they receive an email after they submit a ticket and that ticket is going to have the details of the ticket, the number of the ticket, and you'll also be able to respond to that ticket to include additional information or bother them to get back to you. And so let's go into the automation section right here. The automation section is incredibly powerful. You'll see that there's a variety of different tabs here for different types of automations. The three on the left here we'll dive into a little bit later. They are activity rule, condition rule, and script rule, and it's essentially just to create a ticket off of any of those actions, activities, conditions, or scripts as they run from policies. Again, we'll get to those in a little bit. We talked about the response templates, which we'll also demonstrate here, but I want to stay focused on the event-based and the time-based automations for the time being. And so right here, we can see the event-based automations. We can go ahead and add in here. You'll see that there are a variety of conditions. In this case, the action that I want to have trigger this automation is the ticket itself being created. And so we'll say action equals ticket created, or sorry, condition equals ticket created. That is then whenever our ticket is created, going to produce some sort of response. And so here we can see the actions. We can go ahead and add in an action, add tags, set tags, remove tags, update ticket. So in this particular case, what do we want to do? I think it makes the most sense to go ahead and send an email. And so if we click the email option here, we can then go ahead and customize what the subject is going to be. We can customize what the body is going to be. Now, this is not going to be logged in the ticket feed. Whenever you create an automation as an email, it's not logged in the ticket feed. So this is perfect for notification type emails that you don't necessarily need to keep track of. So I can go ahead and customize our subject here. I can say our ticket has been received. Now I want to use a placeholder here. I want to include the ticket ID in the subject line. And so I can click on the placeholder there. That then gets copied to your clipboard. And we can come up here and paste in that ticket ID. And so using this placeholder, it's automatically going to retrieve the ticket ID here. I also want this to go to the current requester, and I want it to go to anybody who's copied as a requester. And so that's who's going to receive this email saying, hey, this ticket has been received. We can then go ahead and customize our body here. Again, we can say ticket has been logged and we will be in touch shortly. I would highly recommend something a little bit more professional than what I'm typing here. And then we have our very bottom option here, which I, again, would highly recommend that you check the box in. And this is because this allows the ticket to be respondable via email. If we did not check that box, the ticket would be strictly a notification. And when somebody responded to that notification, it would go nowhere. And that's because it was not using this option here to have the email response or the email be respondable. So again, people are conditioned these days to expect that the ticket creation email that they receive is something that they can respond to. So I would highly recommend that you do leverage this right here. Now, let's say you did, for some reason, want to go ahead and have this logged inside of the ticket feed. You can absolutely do that, but you would want to add it as a comment rather than as a email. So if you were sending some sort of automatic email to a requester and you had to log that for some reason, I would recommend logging it as a comment. Again, for my purposes, I don't want to have that clog up the ticket feed. This is kind of a standard operating practice here. And so I don't feel the need to log it additionally in some way, since if the customer does respond, I will have their response in the ticket feed. Now you can also go make this way more granular and way more specific than I have in this particular case. Perhaps I want to introduce business hours. Again, I'm 24/7, but if I wanted to have one response if we're within business hours and then another response if we're outside of business hours, I can definitely do that. And again, that may be beneficial depending on how your operation is set up. I may also want to vary the response based off of the source. Perhaps if this is coming in as an automatically generated ticket from an activity, from a condition, I might have one response. And then if it's a user submitted from an email, from an end user, from a systray, then I may want to have a different response in that case. And then, of course, if they come from a particular organization, if there is a certain subject line present in the email that gets, or the ticket that has been submitted, then I may want to have a different response. So you can see that you can add in a lot of different conditions here to really help you narrow down your automations and have them operate the exact way that you would prefer. Note here that I'm using the all conditions met, meaning that everything that I specify here has to be in lockstep if the automation is going to trigger. If I want to have just any one of these particular actions trigger the automation, then I can come down here and this changes our logic from and to or. So you do have, again, plenty of flexibility when it comes to creating these automations. Now, again, I'm keeping it basic. We're going to go ahead and save this. And so, well, I'll save it after I name it. We'll say this is ticket created, and then we'll go ahead and save that like so. And so this gives us that ticket creation email. Let's use a different style of automation. Let's use a time-based automation. And so right here with a time-based automation, I find this perfect for bothering my requesters to give me additional information and to help me complete the ticket. And so in this case here, what we can say is if it's been more than let's say 3 days since the ticket has been in a waiting status. This will allow us to go ahead and send an email to the end user saying, "Hey, it's been 3 days without a response. Can you please go ahead and add information to the ticket so we can go ahead and get this ticket closed out, help you get your problem solved?" So we would again probably leverage an email here saying, "Hey, we want to bother you. Please respond to us." Uh, we can also add a tag here if we wanted to. We could say, "Hey, the customer has been reminded." And so we might say this is a customer reminder here, and this would note on the ticket that we've actually sent out an email to this person asking them to please, be responsive to the ticket. Now, right here, we're saying if the time waiting has been greater than 72 hours, we might want to, again, make this a little bit more specific. We might also want to add in time since the customer responded. And to me, this is really important because, if it's in a waiting state, but it's because the technician just didn't change the status, then that means the customer is going to get an email saying, "Hey, you're not responding to us," and they're going to be confused because they'll go, "Well, I am responding to you," and it's really to do more with, an error on the part of the technician than it is on the part of the customer or the end user. And so what we can do here is sort of add both of these into play. And so we'll say if the time since waiting is greater than 72 hours and the time since the customer responded is greater than 72 hours, then we can go ahead and send that email, and then we can add that tag. Now, here's another thing to be aware of here is when we say greater than, we mean it. We mean that when we're greater than 3 days, we're going to continuously send that email. And so it makes sense to go ahead and change one of these into an is operator. And so I'll go ahead and change the time since waiting into an is operator. I'll again make that 72 days. And so now when it's been in a waiting state for 72 hours and the time since the customer has responded is greater than 72 hours, that means we're going to go ahead and send that one time and one time only. And just so I can save this, let me go ahead and add in a little bit of boilerplate real quick. And again, we want to allow that to be responsive. Here, let's put test. We want to allow this to be responsive by the recipient. They need to be able to respond to that ticket, and it's going to funnel back into the ticket editor so we see and receive that response. There we go. So now we have an event-based automation, we have a time-based automation. I really like the time-based automations. I think it really helps you move the train along the tracks a little bit and help automate your customers to stay engaged in the ticketing process. Now let's go ahead and talk about some of the automatically generated automations. And so again, we have the activity rule, we have the condition rule. I'll stay focused on the activity rule for now. This is very simple. In this case, I want to know when an AV threat has been detected. In this particular environment, I'm leveraging Sentinel-1. And so whenever Sentinel-1 detects a threat, I want to create a ticket from it. In this case, we're going to have this be an open ticket. Actually, let's make it a new ticket. Let's use the high priority and the major severity here, letting us know that we have a detected threat that we need to leverage. We might want to use the device's user as the requester. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But for now, we're just going to go ahead and save this. And so now we have an AV threat detected rule, which means that I can go ahead and have a ticket created anytime a particular activity fires. In this case, the activity that's going to trigger this is that Sentinel-1 has detected a threat, and that will generate the ticket inside of NinjaOne ticketing. Now let's get a little bit more complex here. The activity rule, the script rule, they basically operate the same way. A script runs, an activity triggers, and a ticket gets created. The condition rule is slightly more complex. So let's go ahead and create a new ticket, condition ticket automation. In this case, I'm going to say I want an open loop ticket. And so what that means is that when this ticket is created, it's going to use all these predefined statuses that we see here. I'm just going to use the policy. I'll use the device's requester. However, a condition is different from an activity or a script. An activity or a script, they fire once and then that's it. With a condition, you have the concept of an alert being created and then that alert later being resolved in some way. And so when that alert is resolved, I might want to have a corresponding behavior within the ticket. And so in this case here, on condition reset, I might want to have it transition to a different status. And so in this case here, I'm going to go ahead and actually leave this in an open status. I actually don't want to go ahead and automatically transition this into a resolved status, which would essentially mean that I'm done with the ticket. I want it cleared off the board so that it's not creating noise and polluting my ticketing environment. If the issue's solved, why would I want to continue to work on it? However, I'll acknowledge that there are some cases in which case you do want to work on it. For instance, what happens if a server goes down? If a server goes offline, I generally want an investigation to know why that happened. I don't necessarily want to just wipe it off the board, swipe left, I'm done with it. I don't want to do that. And so I'll go ahead and leave this in an open status here. And then if the condition re-triggers, I want to append to the existing ticket. I might want to go ahead and leave this in an open status. I might want to add in a tag for this being a re-triggered ticket. Again, if I could type, that'd be great. And so here we have a re-triggered ticket. So now if this is let's say it's in an up-down state, you're not really sure what's going on here. The alert is firing, it's resetting, it's firing again, needs further investigation. This misspelled tag here will give us the ability to note where that's happening. We could identify that with a separate board. We could create separate automations around this so that when we have these tickets that are in that up-down state, we have it being addressed properly and being triaged appropriately. And so we can go ahead and save that there. Now I might want to do the opposite. We can then go ahead and do a closed loop. And so what happens in this case, basically the exact same thing. We're going to leave this in a new status. We're going to use the policy, priority, and severity. But when the ticket is reset, or the condition is reset, I should say, we're going to go ahead and move this into a resolved status. We could even add on time if we were tracking time to sort of make sure that everything was logged appropriately. In this case, I'm not going to do that. We're just going to move it into a resolved status. And again, if the condition re-triggers, we want to make sure that we get our re-triggered tickers right there. That way we have that visibility, knowing that this is kind of in that up-down state, and we might want to pay a little bit more closer attention to it because there's maybe an underlying issue there that's more severe than we think. And oh, there we go. We'll go ahead and again, leave that in an open status. There we go. And to leverage this, we would actually go into policies here. We'd go into, for example, a workstation policy. And then right here, I might say, well, right here with my AV health, I might want to create a ticket. And so let's go ahead and create with an open loop ticket. AV missing is not something that I want to rely on being automatically remediated. I want to look at it and confirm that AV is present and active and the device is secure. Right here, at least one patch is available with a CVSS score greater than or equal to 9.0 for at least 2 days. I want to know about that. That means that there is a ticket out there, or a patch out there, potentially an out-of-band patch that I need to address and maybe take additional actions to ensure that that gets installed. Device has not installed a operating systems patch in 30 days. Again, I want to know about that, so I'll create with an open loop ticket. Now we can also go down to our activities here. You can see all the activities, including from a variety of the AV vendors that we integrate with. And we can go into the SentinelOne tab here. We can see that there's a variety of activities here. And I'll be honest, some of these you might certainly want to create a ticket for. For instance, SentinelOne agent disabled. I might want to go ahead and have a ticket created from that. But in this case, for the purposes of this example, let's go ahead and keep it strictly to when a threat has been detected. And so right here, threat detected at the very bottom there, we'll go ahead and use our AV threat detected rule. And so anytime any device that's on this policy, and this is a global parent policy in this environment for Windows workstations, anytime that happens, we're going to go ahead and create that ticket inside of NinjaOne ticketing. You can see that there's a lot more here that you could leverage. For example, a user account added. Usually these days, user accounts are pretty locked down on the device. And so if a user's being added, again, I want to know about it. I like having those layers of protection to let me know when these actions are occurring, even if they might be normal. I still want to know about it. And yeah, let's go ahead and save that. And we'll go back into the ticketing configuration here. So let's go ahead and talk about fields and forms. You build your fields to then make your forms. And so right here, you can see we have a variety of fields. This could be a checkbox. It could be a date field. It could be a decimal or an integer. It could be a drop-down menu with predefined options here. And so in this case, I might want to go ahead and create something for different types of hardware. And so let's give a Dell option. Let's give a Lenovo option. I cannot type today. A Lenovo option. And let's go ahead and let's do a Mac option as well. And then over on the left, you can see you can control the ability of this to be visible to your end users or not. And so going back to our end user portal that we see here, is this a form that should be end user facing, or is it a form that's strictly for technicians and sort of behind the scenes data collection processes? In this case, I want the end user to be able to see it. So I can make this an optional field for them to fill out. I can make this a required field to fill out where they can't submit the ticket until they actually fill it out. Or again, I can make it read only so they have visibility, but it's not something they actually need to interact with. In this case, I'm going to make it a required field. You could customize this for the end user if you want, but for my purposes, this is going to just be a standard, let's say, device hardware custom custom field. Now for technicians, I'm going to go ahead. I have a couple different enforcement options here. Is this, again, optional for them? Is this required to create the ticket? Is this required to resolve the ticket? I'm going to say that this is required to create the ticket. You can't really proceed further without having this information filled out for this particular form. So we'll go ahead and save that there. We have one. Let's go ahead and also add in a date. And so this might be a due date right there. I'm going to, again, make this required for my end users. And this, in this case, it's going to be required to create for my technicians as well. And so we'll go ahead and save that. I think you see here that this can be pretty flexible with data collection. Now you can see all the various options here. I'm not going to create automations for each one of these or fields for each one of these, but you can see how you can start to build this out and really streamline the collection of the data. You don't want to rely on a technician or an end user to just submit this in the body of the ticket. This gives you, again, a much more linear experience and I think helps cut down on the back and forth of saying, hey, I need this bit of information. Oh no, I need this bit of information. If you have a form that standardizes it, that can really cut down on the ticketing back and forth. Now that we've made these fields, I then need to create the forms. And so I can go ahead and create a new form here. Let's say that this is for hardware procurement. I can add in a description. I can have this display something to the end user. In this case, I'm just going to use the exact same thing. I want my timers to auto start, which is aligned with my division-wide defaults. And I want this to be visible to the end user. Not every form has to be visible to the end user. So you can certainly have those forms that are designed for sort of internal data collection processes without needing to expose them to somebody who's an end user. And then, of course, we might also want this to be the default form that an end user sees. Not really appropriate in this case. I don't want people ordering stuff by default. So it'll be an option, but it's not going to be the default thing that they see. And then I build out the form with the ticket fields. And I'll leverage both of these like so. You can customize how these are going to appear and in what order. And we can go ahead and save that there. And so now we have our forms. And if we go into our ticket here, you'll see that we just need to select the form in question, like so. And I can come down here and I can select, I have Dell hardware, and then this needs to be due, let's say, towards the end of the month. We'll say the 28th of June. Now, if we save this, you'll see that my timer is operating up here on the top right. If we go into the all tickets board, I can actually customize this board. There, the edit button. I can actually customize this board and what information is visible. So there's some system information that we natively track, and you can go ahead and expand how this board looks by adding or subtracting information to be visible as distinct columns here. However, you can also add in the custom fields that we saw earlier. So if you don't want to use just the Ninja native metrics as a part of your ticketing boards, you can go ahead and actually add in any of the custom fields that you've created that have actually been filled out. And so at this case, I can go ahead and add in both these fields. So if I go over there, you can see that I have all this information present. And if I need to get this information out of Ninja into a different service for some reason, or to report on it, I can actually report by exporting to a CSV right here. Should this include just ticket data? Should it include public comments? Or should it include both public and private comments? Essentially everything that we are currently tracking. Now, you might not want to modify your all tickets board like I did. And so if we jump back into the ticketing configuration here, right there, you'll see that we have the ability to create additional boards. And so I can go ahead and create a board here and say, hey, I only want this to be, let's say let's just say we want to do tickets that have a status of either new, open. Actually, I'm doing this in the wrong section here. I should do this below. I want to do this if the status is new, open, or waiting. And this would indicate essentially that it is a ticket that is actively in the help desk process right now. It's not resolved, it's not paused. This is anything that is an active ticket. And honestly, we're just going to go ahead and do active tickets as the name of the board. You can then control the columns and the sorting. So if you want to have certain columns be visible, you absolutely can. And where this becomes useful is with user permissions. You can create a variety of technician roles. You can see here we might have a regional engineer role, and this person has more limited access than a system administrator. And this would be throughout the entire platform, but for ticketing specifically, we can control what they have the ability to do, including the ability to use the mobile app or not, the ability to use that pending emails bucket that we talked about earlier, and the ability to update time entries on closed tickets. They also can have what boards they can view be controlled as well. So perhaps I don't want somebody to see every single one of these boards. Perhaps I want them to stay focused only on tickets that are relevant to them. And this might be tickets that are tagged as a lower priority or a lower severity, low level tickets that a level 1 technician might need to work on. And then I might have a variety of different boards that sort of escalate. And as the tickets become more complicated, then they go to the appropriately skilled person who's going to be able to handle that rather than somebody who's perhaps brand new. And so here you can see that there's a lot of control over what tickets are visible. Of course, if you're in sort of a situation where certain organizations' tickets need to be segmented from other organizations, the ticketing permissions does respect what you have set here. So if I only had access to see Hyde Park Cinebistro, I would only be able to see tickets relating to Hyde Park Cinebistro. I wouldn't see any tickets relating to other organizations. But of course, this can give you a little bit more granular control over exactly what people can see and what people can do. And as a note here, the boards that we see, these are also accessible through the API. So if you were looking to do some more advanced reporting through the API, you can absolutely do that too. We'll go back into the ticketing configuration just very briefly here to talk about tags. This is very useful for tagging tickets. And again, you can use the automations that we saw earlier. Tags as a criteria that you can use there. So tickets with a certain tag can then trigger an automation to occur. Fields and forms also can trigger automations. So the presence of a tag or certain text or certain selection being made in a field within a form, that can also impact automation. So you have a lot of different ways to kick off automations within NinjaOne ticketing. We have not talked about this yet, but if you did want to create a variety of different statuses, you certainly could do that. They would be sub statuses off of the main defaults that we see right here. I would go ahead and recommend right here to control your transition time. When you mark a ticket as resolved in Ninja, it will automatically transition to a closed status by default. And so in here you can see after 1 day of being in a resolved state, it's going to move into a closed status. Again, You might want to give yourself a little bit more time there. 30 days is probably way too long, but you might want to give yourself a little bit more time there. A resolved ticket can be responded into. So if the end user still has an ongoing issue with a resolved ticket, they can say, hey, actually, this isn't resolved. It's still a problem. Once a ticket officially closes, that's the end of it, and a new ticket would be opened. So you might want to give a certain grace period here to ensure that your end users have some time to say, actually, no, this didn't solve the issue. We need to keep this troubleshooting process going. And I think I am near the end of my time here, and we have a giveaway to announce. So I would like to invite Mr. Andrew Lee to come out and announce our winner.
Hi everyone. Good to see so many familiar names in the chat. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Andrew and I'm a marketing programs coordinator at NinjaOne, and I'm here to announce the prize winner of today's webinar. The winner will be able to choose between a Nintendo Switch, a Yeti cooler, a Sonos speaker, or a surf and turf dinner, which kind of includes like filet mignon and lobster tails. So that's great. And the winner is, drum roll please, Sean Ford. Everyone, please drop a huge congratulations in the chat. Sean, please keep an eye out in the following days for an email to claim your prize. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Andrew. This, again, is being recorded. I know we went through a lot today. This will be on YouTube. Would highly recommend you check that out, as well as our previous speedrun webinar on endpoint management. I'm seeing some questions in here, so I'm going to go ahead and scroll real quick and see if there's anything we can answer in the 3 minutes that we have remaining. I will say that if you do have any other questions about what I've said today, please feel free to reach out. jeff.hunter@ninjaone.com. Happy to keep the conversation going. I know this is a lot of me talking at you and not necessarily a lot of opportunity for you to ask questions. So if you do have anything, please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to keep that conversation going.